This podcast may contain certain forward-looking statements concerning Tri-State's plans, performance, and strategies. Actual results may differ materially because of numerous factors, and Tri-State undertakes no obligation to update these forward-looking statements. We urge you to review Tri-State's filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission for a discussion of these factors.
Look what we've achieved in 5 years. Getting into an RTO, making a transition in the energy portfolio, getting the communications right with the members and improving the whole regulatory environment.
Welcome to Western Watts, the podcast where Tri-State and our cooperative members explore what it takes to power the West. From reliability to wildfire mitigation, we dive into the energy issues that matter most to rural, agricultural, and mountain communities across Colorado, Nebraska, New Mexico, and Wyoming. We're here today with Tri-State CEO Duane Highley to learn a little more about his personal life and about his experience coming to Tri-State. So Duane, you're the first guest on the podcast. Are you excited?
I'm very excited to be the first guest on the Tri-State podcast.
You listen to podcasts yourself too, right?
I actually really enjoy having a whole bunch of podcasts on rotation just for that drive in and out. Ordinary news just bores me to death, and I don't like the stuff they talk about. I pick the podcasts I want to listen to, and I just binge on them massively.
What is your genre of podcast?
As you might imagine, there's probably 20 energy-related podcasts in there. So Energy Central and the CoBank one.
Did you just start listening to energy podcasts? Because I feel like nobody cared, and then all of a sudden everybody's talking about energy, and it's very political.
Everybody has a podcast now. I think that's the thing. But no, I've been probably doing that for a while, at least since I've been here at Tri-State for the 5 years, and a little bit before that. And it was just more news, general stuff before that. And then there's the music podcasts and the mixing and mastering podcast, and there's different religious Bible study type podcasts. I just binge it all. If I'm curious about something, I'll just listen to a podcast for a couple of months. Pool math, like how do you balance the chemicals in a pool? Man, I spent 3 months listening to pool podcasts. If anybody wants to know how to balance their swimming pool.
Do you have a pool?
I had a swimming pool.
So you're learning about your imaginary pool that you don't have.
Everybody might need this knowledge. You never know when you're going to need to go balance a pool. Get the water set right. Just the average person might need that.
So aside from pool balancing, give us some insight into some of your other interests. You mentioned music. Is that something you're into?
I enjoy that a lot. I play with the church praise team. I call myself a guitar owner, not a guitar player, but I do hack around on it. And then I have a number of horns that I like to play. Saxophones, clarinets of all different sizes.
Did you do that in school
noise.
too?
Yeah, I guess I started playing French horn in 5th grade and clarinet in 6th grade, and played throughout the band and orchestra in high school, and then bought a saxophone and ran out of money in college and had to sell it, and finally got to get another one, and I got a lot better one finally when I got one, and then I bought 7 other saxophones. This is an embarrassment for me. It's an addiction. And probably my current favorite instrument is an electronic wind synthesizer called an aerophone, and it's controlled by your breath and how hard you pinch on the fake reed that's built into it. So you can change the timbre of the sound and the volume of the sound as you're playing it, and it can make any sound you want.
Sounds like your next instrument is a theremin, probably.
I have a theremin app on my phone, in fact, so we could do theremin, spooky 1950s sci-fi sounds if we wanted to.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about where you're from.
Oh, goodness. So where am I from? I call myself a product of the Midwest because growing up, I lived in a different city every year for the first 12 years of my life. And I think a couple times more than one city a year. And then everybody says, oh, your dad must have been in the military. No, he was a retail store manager for Woolworths, which was the little 5 and dime store on every square of every small town. And so he became a new store opening manager, meaning they'd go set up a store, get all the inventory, set up the displays, hire the staff, train everybody, have the grand opening, and then move to the next town and do it again. So I lived in several different towns in Missouri, in Illinois, east of St. Louis, East St. Louis and Granite City, Illinois, Champaign, Illinois, Urbana, Illinois, Vincennes, Indiana, Bartlesville, Oklahoma, Muskogee, Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Springfield, Missouri, Lee Summit, Missouri, Rolla, Missouri. I'm losing some.
What did you learn from moving around that much?
The interesting thing for me going to school was I went to a different school every year. And it was the first day of school, I think, 4th grade. And that's when I realized, oh, these people don't move every year. And I thought it was normal that just everybody packed all their stuff every summer and moved to a new house.
That's very sink or swim. Were you like oh, I got to start making friends right away and strategized, or you just have to get used to ingratiating yourself with all these brand new friend groups every year?
I think I learned something about what kind of friends group not to get in with. But I mean, it was important if you're going to have friends to make friends quickly. I don't know that I did that consciously. It's just what you had to do. But I also got to do a reset every year.
Every place you go.
Right. You get to reboot every year,
Yeah.
right?
You've done this cooperative thing for a while. You've done the CEO thing before you got here. What made you want to come to Tri-State, move to Colorado, uproot what you had in Arkansas?
There's a couple things that go along with that. It was probably the summer of 2018 when my wife and I were having a glass of wine on the back patio and just enjoying the time together. And it's a warm summer afternoon. And she says, just surprisingly, "Duane, you're bored." And I'm like, "No." She goes, "Oh, I think you are. I think you're bored with your job." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." So, of course, I argued with her and didn't agree with her, but thought about it. Then a few months later, I hear Mike McGinnis is retiring from Tri-State. Now, I had always had a heart for Tri-State. From 2008, I was actually a candidate for the CEO position then, but didn't get it, and that's fine. That's how life is. But always since then, I had just observed and watched everything happening at Tri-State and had this dream, maybe someday. I'll say my wife and I also had just such a great love for the West in general, New Mexico and Colorado in particular, and had thought someday when we retire, we'll buy a place out there. So it was the culmination of a number of dreams. And when we're here then in 2019 doing the interview with this board of directors, and it was a big snowstorm. In fact, it was very difficult to get here. Flights were canceled. Rick Gordon was calling me. He's the chair at that time. And "I'm not sure if you're going to be able to get here." "You need to be able to get here, Duane. It's the interview." I'm like, "I know, I'm trying." So we get here and we're in the morning and Lisa looks out the window of the hotel and it's just, everything's covered with snow. And she says, it just thought comes to her like a voice from heaven. And it says, "May be hard, but it may be beautiful." And so that was the mantra for our transition here, is it may be hard, may be beautiful. And when you say what attracted me in Tri-State, it's literally the challenge that was before Tri-State. To me, I just had this strange thought that maybe I could be part of that and help with that challenge that we were facing. So I'm proud to have been part of it and grateful that the board allowed me to try.
And you came in at a time where changes were already starting to get rolling at Tri-State, driven by our members. How did that feel coming in and knowing they chose you to lead through those changes, transitions?
The board and I came to agreement on path. To me, that was it. Look what we've achieved in 5 years. Getting into an RTO, making a transition in the energy portfolio, getting the communications right with the members and improving the whole regulatory environment. And then the idea that there might be federal money to help with some of this. All those were ideas, the genesis of which came in those very first meetings with the board. Although that was, by the way, my 3-year plan. So it's taken 5 years to execute the 3-year plan. But look at what's been achieved.
Yeah, you have a unique position leading your leadership team and all Tri-State employees, but you're reporting to the board. You're answering to the board, knowing the priorities coming from them are how we need to keep making all these decisions. Is it a hard balance, or do you feel like it's pretty clear the direction you need to take things at any given point?
I felt pretty clear about it. I felt like I've had a lot of clarity. I think my role is one that kind of bridges the two sides. So I represent the employees to the board and the staff, and then I represent the board back to the employees. A lot of our employees get to be in the boardroom, which I think is great. I've been with organizations before where the board was uneasy having staff in the room, and they only wanted to bring them in for their presentation and send them back out. And I thought that was really bad, because the more people that can get more familiar with our board, then everybody innately knows what that board wants, right? So that's been a strength for this organization. We might have that whole back row full of employees in the boardroom, and every one of those employees is learning something about how the board thinks that they take back to their everyday decisions.
And there's such a diversity, too, from the board. The issues that you're going to face in northern Wyoming versus the very south tip of New Mexico, like the weather isn't even the same.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. The diversity of Tri-State is one of the things that really attracted me to Tri-State. The people and the cultures and the geography is just, I think, the most magnificent in this country.
This was a while ago, but I got a list from GIS listing the national parks and landmarks and forests and cultural sites, and it's pretty impressive. We're in almost 40. Because we're rural, that's where all the stuff is.
All the stuff is all the cool stuff. Absolutely.
Well, the canyons that all of the transmission goes over for some reason. Why are there so many canyons on our system?
It's just where we are.
Yeah.
Everybody loves a good canyon.
Everybody loves a good canyon.
Makes great pictures.
Oh, one last thing. Do you have a motorcycle?
I have 2 motorcycles currently. Yeah.
How did you get into motorcycles?
Oh, dear goodness. My first car was a motorcycle. I think probably my dad had always wanted a motorcycle and never got one. So when I'm turning 16, he's, do you think you'd like a motorcycle? Now, what 16-year-old wouldn't say, hey, yeah, sure, to that? And so we went out and bought this Honda 350 Scrambler, and I'd never driven anything, car or motorcycle or otherwise, and went out in the street and just started figuring out how to let the clutch out without killing the engine. And before you knew it, was riding and was hooked and rode it in all weather to high school every morning, no matter how cold it was, except when there was ice on the ground. Otherwise, I was riding it. And I used to show up and everybody be like, isn't it cold today? I'd say, it's all in your mind. Cold is in your mind. It's just an illusion, but it's just what you're used to. And so that started a lifetime of riding. Of course, when my wife and I started dating, she was from a different high school. And she asked her friend who went to my high school, do you know this guy, Duane Highley? He just asked me out. And he goes, oh, yeah, he's got a car and a motorcycle. Now, at that point, I'd progressed to having a car. And so she thought, wow, that's really pretty cool. He's got a car and a motorcycle. So she somehow was willing to go out with me on a purely speculative basis. But when I show up at her house to pick her up on the motorcycle, I don't think her dad was very much in favor of that. No, he wasn't very much in favor of it at all. And then I corrupted her so badly, she decided she wanted her own bike. And so she bought a Honda 360T high pipe, really nice for the day motorcycle. And she rode it back and forth to work some until it rained on her a few too many times. And she thought, maybe I'd rather have a car. But then I think some of the best times in our marriage have been some of the tours we've done together on bikes in Europe. That's the coolest thing we ever did, was
That's
just
fancy.
Go get on the bike and ride and see things like you can never see them. And it's safer, by the way, too, because the drivers aren't all on their cell phones.
So you and your wife are high school sweethearts.
I just graduated and she was still in high school. So, yeah.
Do you have a favorite ride in Colorado that you like to do?
I used to always just ride up on the Front Range and go up what's that? You go from my house to Nederland, and then you take the Peak to Peak Highway back to Estes Park and back. That's a pretty drive. It's just a short ride. Now my bikes are relocated a little further west, and I'm going to be doing more riding on like Monarch out there.
Do you and your wife still ride together?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We enjoy that.
Is that common actually for like husband and wife to ride together?
We ride together 2 up on one bike typically.
Okay.
Yeah. She's had her own motorcycle, and the motorcycle I call her motorcycle is one I ride more, and she thinks that's a joke. Like when I say that's Lisa's motorcycle. Yeah, she can ride. She's got her endorsement. She just prefers to ride on the back with me, and I prefer for her to do that too. So we're both happy that way.
I guess for anybody listening in, what's your rig right now, your riding rig?
So I've got a BMW R1200 Roadster. It's just a fast and very nice motorcycle. It's my favorite bike I ever had. And then I've got a little Yamaha Dual Sport on off-road that's just for exploring those dirt roads. I'm not a heavy, hardcore dirt rider. I'm not going to be doing any jumps or leaving the ground, hopefully at any point in time. I do like to get on a Forest Service road and go explore.
Yeah, this is insider info, but for a second when we were doing the Momentum annual report, it was like, oh yeah, what if we have Duane for a CEO letter, like with his bike, with his helmet? Oh, what a dream.
Right. No, not needed.
Thanks for tuning in to Western Watts. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or on our website at tristate.coop/WWPod. We'll catch you next time. Thank you for joining us for the Western Watts podcast. I'm Elizabeth Schilling here
and I'm Julia Perry. Sorry, I ruined it already.
We can do it again.
That was pretty good, actually.
Yeah. We can
spontaneous.
I'm Julia Perry, and that was What's Up.
Ow. Ouch. I hate it. I'm sorry.
Tell them if you're asked to do the podcast, you have to do it under pain of death. Carte blanche.
So this is for like employees, right? So it has been my great pleasure to share this time with you today. And I'm going to expect any employee that you ask in the future to be just as generous with their time and come in and answer any possible question that you would ask.
We'll attach that to the email we send out to people
you
we,
go.
we
Absolutely.
want.
Yep.
You heard it here.